I wish we could take a trip during school.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It doesn't work quite the same.
No, no. But you get
Not,
to have your
I was going to
you
say,
get to have
not
your
that I envy the situation at all either.
No, no, no,
So
yeah.
it's one of those things where we get that 2 week in the summer that's like a reminder of what it could be
Right,
that
right.
spoils you for the year.
Yep, yep. See, if it's always spoiling you, then that means that I don't remember what it means because I was going to liken it to something. Like, if you don't, I remember when my kids were like still toddlers and maybe little kids, not even big, but when they were little kids, I remember telling people if you don't think that your kids are assholes from time to time, then you're not spending enough time. So the fact that you guys really look forward to those 2 weeks, it means that you're spending a good amount of time with him. Hopefully, it's quality time. I expect
Hopefully.
that it is. I
It's
expect that it
it
is.
is funny though. Like today was a perfect example, and I'm for whatever reason over the past few months we're just in one of those swings where like Jacob asks Emily to play, and she'll be busy doing something else. It's like, well, go ask your dad to play. I've got a little bit of time or whatever. I won't hear a peep from him. He'll just go read. And like I even asked him, how come you never ask me to play? I don't know. And then it's for whatever reason we're in that particular cycle. So we'll see when it
I,
changes.
yeah, yeah, I can remember things. I can remember being that way.
I do too. Like I do very vividly remember the early part of life being far more attached to mom than dad. But then once I hit a point where I was going places with dad, like I almost didn't care one way or another about any else. It's like so I do expect there'll be a point where Emily will be annoyed that she's not asked for anything anymore. But I know right now it's in that whole. If you scroll any social media, you'll see people talking about taking a shot every time you hear mom or squad or just depending on which lifestyle thing you want to do. Um, and so I'm sure right now it's oh god constantly, and then in a year or two it'll be how come you never ask for anything from me anymore, and just ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say Luke is 13 now, parenting kind of stuff, and I was gonna say Luke is 13 now. As I so I can when I take a step back, I can remember being 13 and how I was and how the things were and how everything was the World Cup final. Everything is got so much weight to it. It's like my grandparent that died when I was 13 is the one that I had the most emotional reaction to, but it turned out that was the grandparent that I had the least amount of actual interactions with my whole life. And I had to do with being 13 years old. And so I'm having a hard time with he's 13 and I know that I'm coming across incredibly critical of but it's also because where are my shoes? Well, I didn't take your shoes off of you, young man. I don't know where they are. You know, and he'll spend 5-10 minutes looking for his shoes, and then he's like, Dad, I cannot find my shoes. And like, okay, either you're getting picked up by your mom and she's been waiting on you, or I've been ready to go for 5 minutes, and then I go look for his shoes and I find it in less than 5 seconds because I lifted up the blanket that was next the couch where he took his shoes off, and it's really hard to be. I have to keep reminding myself he is a kid. He is not, even though he's gotten a lot older and he's so much more capable than he was, because I don't have to take care of him like a little kid anymore. He's still a kid, and he a little bit of grace and just understanding about he needs. What he needs from me is understanding and patience, and sometimes I'm tired. I've run out of those things, and the fact that my relationship style is anxious attachment and his is avoidant, that does not make for, especially me being the dad and him being the.
It's interesting to think about how long that stage lasts because we deal with it already now in Jacob's
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and
it's gonna be more.
yeah yeah oh I know I'm fully prepared
You
for it.
remember? I'm
Yeah.
sure you remember.
But one of the things that we've tried to do relatively recently is emphasize something part of where this comes into play is time management as well. Like there's a long stretch where time seemed to make sense to kids. Um,
Right.
and so one of the things that we've been trying pretty heavily to do is to say, once we get home, don't forget these are the things that have to be done. I'll let you know, when it's time to get a shower. But before then, I need to get these things done, and trying to figure out the whole doing the things I need to do and not just going and doing what I want to do for the rest of the day kind of thing. And there's not a good way to teach it. I don't care who you are. If you think you have a good way to teach it, you're wrong because it won't work for somebody else's kid. Like it just,
Right.
there's so many unique variables there. And one of the most frustrating pieces is the actual bedtime itself. Because what we've done is we've implemented if you're ready for bed on time, great, no issues. If you're late, we shave a minute off bedtime. So instead of it being whatever time it was, it goes back a minute. But if you're a minute early, you gain a minute, right? So you would think that this would be easy enough to comprehend and navigate. And yet it's such a problematic experience that it makes you wonder if you're failing as the parent for trying to do something that teaches a combination of repercussion and reward without stakes or without real stakes, because
Mm-hmm.
it should be easy to say, oh, bedtime's 8:10. If I'm ready at 8:09, it's 8:11 tomorrow, and it doesn't seem to matter. It's I'm going to go read or do whatever else I want to do, and oh, look, I'm late. Now I'm just going to keep being late.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you get to a point where it's like, oh, I'm already this late, so why the hell should it matter? And there's like no intention to
Yeah,
you know
so
there was a
we have
there was
tackled
a
that with that same scenario where it's every 5 minutes past you lose a minute,
yeah
but all that
yeah
does is mean you have a 5 minute window of oh well I'll push it to the edge.
that's how humans are. um I remember there was uh, a behavioral study. I mean, it turned out to be a behavioral study. I don't know if that was the intention, but there was a daycare, and they had a problem. The people that they had problems with late pickup were problematic, and it was just like, okay, we'll penalize people for X amount of, you're this much late. Well, you're going to be penalized for this, and it's just like, so when people knew that they were going to get penalized, then it made the problem worse because it was like, well, basically the logic was the way people respond is like, okay, I'm already penalized for this, so I might as well take advantage of it, and I'm not gonna I'm not rushing to get there. When they changed it to, all right, there's a monetary discount for getting, you get your, you pick up your kid 98% of the time before the pickup ends, then you get a discount on your next month's daycare uh, costs. And it was like that was so much more effective than penalizing the people who were late. And it's just like, it's one of those things. It's like, as a parent, you have to figure out for each child that you have how they respond to things. And so so bedtime, as even though my kids are 13 and 11, the bedtime routine has also been somewhat problematic too, because it's like, okay, it's time for bed, and right now they're still at an age, they haven't hit where they're like sleeping late because they sleep late. They're still waking up early, so I was like, to make sure that they get enough sleep, I have to implement a bedtime. And I feel like that's going to change pretty soon. And, they're just going to start sleeping. They're going to stay up later and sleep later. And it won't be a problem. They'll get enough sleep because, when you're a teenager, you sleep late. It's fun to sleep late or whatever. Anyway, for whatever reason, I'll tell I feel like 11 and 13 is not too young of an age to be like, all right, it's time for bed. Go get ready for bed. And go get ready for bed is like, getting your teeth brushed, getting your pajamas on, taking your putting your stuff away, all the stuff that you do for a bedtime routine. But gosh darn it, I'll like send them up to get started, and I hear them. It's like I hear them messing around, and that's fine if they're getting the stuff done. But when I come up and they haven't done a single one of the things for bedtime routine, I'm like, I start telling them, like, okay, you guys need to do this and you need to do that and you need to do the other. And then they're like, Dad, I'm 13. I can do this. And I was like, I know, but why haven't you? It's like, I sent you up here expecting you to have these things done and none of it's done. And I'm trying to think, the way that I'm thinking of the next time this, they're over and we have bedtime routines and be like, all right, do you guys want to, be upfront with them? It's like, do you want to go and upstairs and fuck around for a little while and pretend to do your bedtime routine and me come up and tell you, like, get these things done? Or do you want to actually go do it and then fuck around for a while until I come up and be like, lights out, get in bed, that kind of thing. So I'm going to try that and see what happens. Try to give them some more autonomy, but also remind them, you guys often just fuck around without doing anything on your own. And then when I come up and tell you to do it, you feel like you're being over parented. So we'll see.
It's funny. It's a perfect correlation to why the punitive nature of the criminal justice system as we know it does not work. And why those studies have continually backed up the same principle. That punishment-based, like, deterrence doesn't do anything. It's rehabilitation from a behavioral change mindset that actually makes any kind of impact. And for the most part, as funny as the correlation is, it means that every day as a parent, you're basically a corrections officer trying to figure out how to make your inmate a more productive person at the end of the day.
And that's not what we're going for here. That's not what I'm going for here.
Not at all. It's just, it's funny how we talk about all these different things in very abstract terms, but when you look at how we behave day to day, we reaffirm a lot of this same shit that doesn't work without realizing what we're doing. And we're using the example of parenting as the option here, but you can see it everywhere. When you talk about being a decent person and then you hear rhetoric about someone's age or race or sex or something else, like it creates that same dissonance that you hear when you talk about a convicted person versus a kid. Like, it's not like those are the same thing by any means, but so why is our approach so rooted in the same concepts that we can't see the fallacies in those concepts?
Yeah. It's, it makes me wonder, is it like something inherent to, is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it something that was nurtured to us because we grew up in a society that this is the norm? Or is there something in our nature? Or is it a little of both?
I'm glad you asked. I have a theory that is not well tested.
That's okay, because you've claimed that it's not well tested.
And my big thing is that I have not looked at it through the lens of a non-American individual. So I can't say that I've explored the different parenting approaches or, correctional approaches necessarily outside of the scope of what we see here in the United States. But I think the way we preach individual possibility for success and failure breeds that problem. And I don't have anything that I can point to specifically other than saying that it creates the same type of rift when you think about contributing to society or being an empathetic person or trying to do something for the betterment of someone other than the self. Like, all of these things are intertwined, and all of these things show very similar traits to the way a incarcerated person would rebel against a punitive, deterrence-based correctional system, the same way a kid would rebel against a very authoritative, do as I say, parental system, where we preach this value of individualism, and it doesn't actually promote anything positive 90% of the time. Obviously, the 90% is me just pulling a number out of my ass, since I already said it wasn't well tested. But it's that the illustration is that it's Well, the illustration is that it's more than the majority of the time.
For sure. And it's, you know, but that's like human nature. People don't like to be told what to do. But you know what people do like? They like if you like treat them as an individual and explain things to them. Like I can go to my child or to my wife and I can say, "Hey, um, I want this done in this way," and most of the time, I'll get a negative response from either one of those three people if I just say, "Do it this way." But if I say, "Hey, I want to," I was thinking, you're going to do this thing, and the scenario I want to avoid this particular scenario, and the way that I would do it is this way, so that we can avoid this, this thing that I don't want. And when it's like when you change the emphasis on I'm telling you how to do something versus hey, I was thinking about this, and this is I have a problem with this particular scenario as a result of what you're about to do, and this is how I would avoid it. That's so much better received than telling someone what to do, because you treat them, you bring them into the problem solving space, and you make them a part of the solution instead of a cog in a machine.
I would love to agree with you. In theory, I agree with you. In practice, okay. I have had issues. So,
okay.
So there's. I'm going to use a very specific example because it's hilarious. Or it's hilarious to me because it's inside whatever. So one of the things that really gets to me, and I don't know why. I think it is something kind of just rooted in childhood with the way my parents would either say or do things. But one of the things that really gets to me is if the kitchen sink has a lot of dirty dishes in it. I have no problems if they're stacked beside the sink, but I have problems if they're just in the sink. So, like, rinse the dish, set it over to the side, come back and deal with it later. No problems. 100% on board. Good to go. Never fails that we'll get to a point where I will go in to do something, use the sink, and there will be dishes in the sink. And this is further exacerbated by current use of two sides of the sink, but it's even irrelevant to the story. But and what I have tried is saying, very clearly, I do not understand it. It makes me feel very apprehensive and anxious and like things are filthy if we have dishes stacked in the sink. I do not have any issues with it though if they're stacked beside the sink. Can we just either move them to the side or go ahead and put them in the dishwasher? Like whatever works best, I'm more than happy to embrace. I just need them to not be stacked in the sink because it gets to me in a way that I can't explain. And that has not worked at all, ever, for me. Now, I say that, and I say that with that kind of emphasis, but I will also...
Because it's low stakes, so...
But I will also add the caveat that in this house, since we have moved, it has not been as prevalent or as big an issue. And I don't know if the change in location kind of helped, change the mindset, or if it's because in this house we're not using the two sides of the sink in the exact same way as we were previously, where they're just both wide open. Whatever the change, in this house it has been better, and I'm grateful for it because I no longer have that unnatural and irrational anxiety about dishes in the sink here that I had previously. But my messaging of the issue never changed the behavior. It was a physical change in location that changed the behavior. And so it's not to derail it, because I do agree with you. Overall, as people, we do respond better to being a part of the conversation and not just being told. And we see that all over the place, especially from someone like me who is very anti-authoritarian and doesn't like being told anything in a way that is very much meant to negate my opinion or thoughts or views in any way, shape, fashion, or form. And so I do recognize and agree with that. I just find it hilarious that the one time I have tried to really focus on a similar approach has been the one time that it has horrifically backfired consistently.
That's that's the experience I've experienced that dynamic. It's like I've come to a place where it's like, in a situation like that where I also dislike dishes being in the sink. It depends, if this, if there's like, it doesn't matter what, I'm not sure what the number of dishes is, but there's a point where it's like, okay, this is fine and I'm not bothered. And it's not necessarily the length of time that the dishes are in the sink, it's the condition of the dishes in the sink and the number of dishes in the sink. Those two factors are a problem. But the length of time is not necessarily a problem. If we went a whole week and there were like two plates in the sink, and they were like, they got put in the sink and they were rinsed and there's like no food particles left on them, they just need to be moved over to the dishwasher to be properly cleaned and sterilized. I don't know if the dishwasher's sterilized, but something close to it. Sanitized.
Yeah, I mean, tomato at that point. But I would agree that as long as it gets hot enough, there's an aspect of...
Well, coming from like having worked in a lab, like sterilized, like you need a autoclave to truly sterilize something.
That's fair.
So sanitize, I think, is the correct term for what a dishwasher does to plates. It kills germs for sure. But it's like if there are two plates, let's say there's just two plates in there and they're off to the side, and I have a relatively large sink, like it's the size of, I think it's bigger than the double sink that I had in my old house, but it's a single sink, so it's just a big sink. But it's not as big as like a kitchen, like commercial kitchen sink. I wouldn't say it's that big, but anyway, if that is the condition of it, like even if the sink were like half full, but it's not, like you can't see it from, like it's not coming up over the horizon of the counter, I'm usually okay with that, as long as the sink is still functional and there's nothing gross in the sink. I'm more or less okay with that, and I'm okay with that for an extended period of time. But when the sink becomes less functional or difficult to do like normal sink functions in there, or there's gross stuff in the sink, even if it's just like one thing, I'm not, like that's a problem for me. And I've gotten to a place where it's like, I realize the people that I live with don't have that same value. And if I want to maintain, I've just decided that if I want to maintain this particular value, I have to do it for everybody. And once I came to that conclusion, it's turned out to not be that big of a deal. I asked my, when my kids are putting things away, I ask them like rinse it out, rinse, take all the big food particles and scrape them into the trash and then rinse everything else off. And, that's, they got to do that. But like, if the dishwasher is, prepared to receive dirty plates, I was like, and then go ahead and put it in the dishwasher. But I've gotten to a place where it's like, I'm going to live the way that I want to live, and I can't expect other people to always have the same values as me. And if I'm not hurting them and it's not hurting me, then
I think the main reason things changed for the better, for lack of better phrasing, here is because we came from a house with a larger split sink than what we have here. But we had a lot more counter space as well. And so there was an area set up beside the sink for drying of things that were hand washed or what things need to be rinsed, etc. But here, there's not enough counter space to keep that same setup. And so one side of the sink is actually now become that drying space. So we effectively have a single sink instead of a double sink, which means everybody is invested in making sure the single sink stays usable. And I think that's really what drove the change. But at the same time, one of the other things that it illustrates the selfishness of thought that goes into that is that I really don't have a problem with it until it impacts me. Right. So
right.
And that's an inherently selfish human thing to have, but
But
it
it's not
goes to the
necessarily.
same.
I was gonna say it's not necessarily wrong.
No, but it goes to the same point as what you were getting at, where like when I really have the biggest problem with it is when I go to rinse something out and I can't because of what's in the sink, or I go to dump something for the disposal and I can't because of what's in the sink. It's it's when it prohibits me from using the other functions of the sink that it really exacerbates the problem.
I hear you.
Realistically,
I hear.
yeah, I mean realistically, that's just kind of no different than if I go to throw something away and the trash is so full that I can't close it afterwards. Why doesn't that bother me with the same irrational level of anxiety that the sink does?
Yeah, you'd have to go. I wonder how far, but you'd have to go back into your life to figure out where that comes from. And maybe it's just who you are. That's part of the genetic mosaic of all the people that are your ancestors. You never know.
I'm pretty sure this one's behavioral. I don't know this for sure, but it seems true enough. Like, I think in the back of my head, both my mother and my mother's mother would complain about the kitchen being just filthy if the sink was full, where it didn't matter if the same stuff was piled to the side or anywhere else, but if the sink was full, the kitchen was a mess and had to be cleaned top to bottom. Like, I think it stems from that behaviorally, but I don't know that for sure.
That makes sense. If that's what you grew up with, then yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I can remember this thing, and because like when you're a kid, it's like everything is real. Like everything is, there's nothing that's made up or fake. And I remember I can't remember if it was kindergarten or first grade, but I had a teacher. It was one of those two, and the teacher said she knew when she was getting a cold if she sneezed 3 times in a row. And it was well into adulthood that I realized that's not how you know you've got a cold. It was way too long for me to be like, today I learned that that's not true.
This sounds so much like the whole color of the snot argument.
Oh, yeah.
Growing up, it was always if it's yellow, you're okay, but if it's green, you're getting a cold or it's infected or whatever. And I mean, scientifically, no. uh, it's just the easiest way to go ahead and debunk it. Like, color of snot does not equate anything. It does tell you things, but
it does tell you things.
But it doesn't tell you anything about whether you have a cold or not.
Right. Sometimes it tells you that you were in a smoky area.
Or you cut grass.
Or you cut grass. But you know what? Color of urine does tell you
yes.
Hydration, if you're hydrated or not.
Or if you take a multivitamin with a lot of vitamin B.
Yes, I was going to say, if it comes out neon yellow, you've probably had a lot of B vitamins.
It's fascinating though how those types of things, like just thinking about how uniquely human it is to equate things like that to other, and the whole argument of causation and correlation from the get-go, like it's really a microcosmic examination of that argument with regard to bodily function at this point. But it's so fascinating to see that continually play out as well in everything, and how easy it is for people to mistake correlation for causation. And on top of that, how easy it is to see people spout things that are not even accurate correlations and not understand why they're not accurate correlations and have no clue about correlation. Or, sorry, no clue about causation. Wrong word at the end.
It's important to keep those straight.
Very important.
I'm pretty sure that I've talked about this before, but one of my favorite websites is Spurious Correlations. Spurious Correlations.
Yes, you have mentioned them before, and it's been,
oh my God,
it's been on my mind a lot over the past week as I've seen other things. But go ahead.
I'm looking at the site right now because it's always so much fun to see, and it's like right now the first one on here is the distance between Saturn and the Moon correlates well with bachelor's degrees awarded in physical science. I mean, it's fantastic.
And even today, the classic is the whole increases in ice cream sales and increases in murder rates, I think it is per capita, being a false correlation, obviously. So
Yeah.
today, I don't even remember the full context of the article, but it was calling upon that particular correlation, but it added, well, maybe it's the heat that causes both. And it's hilarious to think about from the standpoint of if you have an analytical mind and can objectively view, I mean, there's so many caveats up front. We're going to miss like 90% of the South. The biggest thing is we can always create a correlation to support an argument. Understanding causation is far more important and requires a lot more work than just saying, if this increases at the same rate, or if this increases and this increases, they must be related. It's just, that's the way people want to think about things, and it's not the way the world actually works.
It's great to start with a correlation, but then you've got to
you have to prove it.
You have to look for causation. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap.